Hey everyone, and welcome to today's Explainer. We're jumping right into a really fun, highly relatable piece of writing from a gardener named Ang. It's part of their Notes on Gardening series, and it tackles a dilemma that literally anyone who's ever stepped foot inside a plant nursery knows all too well, whether to finally pull the trigger and buy a plant you've been eyeing for years. Today, we're looking specifically at the nerve plant, or, if you want to get technical about it, fittonia-albivenis. We're going to break down Ang's recent journal entry to see exactly how a hobbyist navigates the tricky, sometimes expensive waters of plant acquisition.
The entry begins so simply. Dear Interweb. Dated August 21st, 2026, it immediately pulls us into this cozy diary-like format. It's actually a direct continuation from a previous post, perfectly setting the stage for a highly personal little micro-journey. You know, we aren't looking at some sterile botanical textbook today. Instead, we're getting a front-row seat to a real grower's internal monologue, which is just a fantastic way to understand the real-world decisions we all make when building out our collections.
Okay, let's dive into this with our first section, the initial reluctance, or seeing it but skipping it.
So, Ang notes that over the course of visiting various nurseries and garden centers, the nerve plant has popped up quite a few times. In fact, Ang was fully aware of this specific species and had even looked into it many moons ago, as they put it. But right here in the text, Ang admits, my past experiences kept me from pursuing it further. It's a fascinating admission, right? Because even with prior knowledge and repeated exposure to the plant, there was some sort of psychological or practical barrier in place. We don't get the specific details of those past experiences, but we definitely know they were significant enough to make Ang actively pass on the fittonia time and time again. It's that classic hesitation we all feel when past struggles make us second-guess making a new commitment. But then, everything shifts. Section 2. A sudden turning point. The fish store revelation.
Now, what's really interesting about this is that the catalyst for changing Ang's mind wasn't a return trip to a botanical garden or some fancy nursery. Nope, it was a completely unexpected trip to a fish store. It's funny how inspiration strikes when we aren't looking for it, right? Seeing the nerve plant grown successfully inside a terrarium there instantly connected some dots. First off, that terrarium environment proved the plant's viability in a contained space. Second, it immediately highlighted a brand new potential use, cultivating the plant near Ang's outdoor ponds. And the underlying reason tying it all together? The plant's high humidity requirements. Suddenly, a plant that was previously just totally written off has a highly specific, logical use case in Ang's existing setup.
Which brings us to section 3, where we enter the evaluation phase. Weighing the drawbacks, beauty versus budget.
And this brilliantly illustrates what happens next. An idea is really just an idea until it survives that evaluation phase. Ang has found a reason to want the plant, but now has to weigh the pros and cons before committing actual resources. On one hand, you have the striking sensory details pulling Ang in. The eye-catching aesthetics of the nerve plant are super hard to ignore. Specifically, it's that intricate foliage, featuring a reddish lattice pattern contrasting sharply against bright green leaves. It's an absolute visual stunner. But on the other hand, you've got the harsh financial reality keeping our author at bay. The high price of individual plants based on what Ang has seen so far. It is the absolute classic gardener's dilemma perfectly mapped out. Does that striking beauty actually justify the steep cost?
So we move into section 4, the final verdict, balcony terrarium or the bucket list.
So how does one actually resolve this? Well, Ang wraps up this journal entry by coming to a highly structured, super logical conclusion. Let's break down the clear if-then logic they arrived at here, because it's basically a brilliant three-step flowchart of personal accountability. Step 1. The decision hinges entirely on whether Ang actually wants to utilize their currently underutilized front balcony to build a brand new terrarium. It all starts with the space and the commitment to the project. Step 2. If the answer to step 1 is yes, then Ang will explore the option and buy the high-priced nerve plant specifically for this new build. But look at step 3. Otherwise, if the terrarium build doesn't happen, the fittonia doesn't get bought. It simply stays right there on the long-pending, ever-growing bucket list. Honestly, it's an incredibly disciplined way to approach a hobby.
Which leaves us right here, staring at the ultimate question. Will the nerve plant escape the ever-growing bucket list? Ang signs off the journal entry with, "Till the next post," leaving the outcome totally up in the air. Will that random burst of inspiration from the fish store be enough to conquer the high price tag and the actual effort of building a brand new balcony terrarium? Or will those mysterious past experiences and budget constraints keep the nerve plant just out of reach forever? It's the universal struggle of gardeners everywhere, and it leaves me absolutely eager to find out what Ang decides to do next. So, what about you?
Take a second to think about what's sitting on your own bucket list right now and what it would actually take for you to finally cross it off.